Welcome back to the Working Class Gamer Podcast. I'm your host, Director Warren. This is episode 11, and today we're going to be covering the Xbox Developer Direct. Assassin's Creed Shadows previews have finally hit the internet. The Switch 2 gets revealed, and I give my lady a PS5. All of that and much more right after this. Yo, what's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy, Director Warren, also known as Stalin Warren, and I'm your host of episode 11 of the Working Class Gamer Podcast. It's really good to be here, man. I really can't complain. I got to get my brain out of intro mode because I do the intro a certain type of way, and I got to get back into my conversational air. But I'm really glad to be here, man. I love recording this podcast. I appreciate all of you guys for watching. I'm seeing some growth. I'm seeing some engagement behind the episodes of the podcast, just on the channel, and also in real life with some of you guys who do watch and let me know that you watch. And I just appreciate all of you. I got to start every episode with a message of appreciation because, as you all know, this is to serve as a space for good, engaging conversation, a safe space for gamers of all types. We're going to keep it real, but we're not going to keep anybody out of the convo. And I'm going to try to cover the things that matter most to gaming as a whole, but also matter most to me. And you guys will be able to see that throughout this episode, actually, especially once we get into the Xbox Developer Direct. Special shout out to my boy Mon P for that music for our new intro. That's not the final visual for our introduction, but I did want to have something a little bit engaging that I put together. But I want to do something a little more ESPN-ish for gaming, if that makes sense. But that is going to be the music of the Working Class Gamer Podcast. And just thank you so much, my friend, for that beat. It's amazing. And you're a very talented individual. So, you know what we're going to be talking about today, but I do have some quick hits that I want to get into. 2025 is shaping up to be the year of the Demon Slayer. With the return of the Slayer in Doom: The Dark Ages and another Xbox favorite that we'll get into later, as well as the latest and greatest in Chinese action gaming. If you know what I'm talking about, you know that I'm talking about Phantom Blade Zero. They just recently dropped their Year of the Snake trailer, and if I was kind enough to screen record it for you, you're probably seeing that now. It looks really awesome. I haven't talked about that game too much on this channel yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. They have designed something. The design philosophy for this particular title is something they call Kung Fu Punk, and it seems to combine steampunk elements and just traditional Chinese martial arts filmmaking and swordplay. And I'm just really excited for all these elements coming together. The game comes to us from developer S Game out of China. I actually just recently read that game has seen an increase in its funding and investment because of the success of Black Myth Wukong. So I'm really excited to see what they do in this game, made in Unreal Engine 5. I just felt like I had to highlight the Year of the Snake trailer in particular, not only because, I love when games and developers communicate with people, especially the ones that just so happen to be developing the most hype games on their respective platforms. I love when they, keep their fan base in mind and give you something really awesome and sumptuous. It's a 4-minute, 50-second trailer. So it's a lot to enjoy. I've said before on this channel, and I'll say it again, I love when good editing or good filmmaking comes together for the marketing and promotion of any video game. And, these action games, particularly out of the East, what's that game? Lost Souls aside, Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, and now Phantom Blade Zero. I mean, these have appeared to be and have played so far a very unique flavor in the character action genre. And I don't think it's going to be any different with Phantom Blade Zero. They keep showcasing new weapons. The character designs of the bosses looks really dope. I don't know how much customization there's going to be for the main character himself, but I am very excited to engage in that world, to figure out all the combos, to find out what weapon sets I like the best, what kind of skills I want to equip, all that sort of stuff. I know there's going to be a demo for that game. I heard somebody say the other day, we are kind of back in the age of demos, and I'm a big fan of that. And this seems like an obvious candidate for an eventual demo. I'm actually really excited about it being an Unreal Engine 5 game. I know that engine in particular gives some gamers and journalists a little bit of trepidation, but again, Black Myth Wukong was an achievement on day one, and especially now after a couple of patches. I mean, it is one of the best PlayStation 5 console games you can play. Wish it was on the Series X, because I feel like that Series X would run it a little bit better than the base PS5. I play it still to this day on my PS5 Pro. But yeah, Stellar Blade, again, like just well, that was an Unreal Engine 4 game, but Unreal Engine 5, I think, has shown us more good than bad. And the amount of time they've spent on Phantom Blade Zero doesn't seem like a short amount of time. In fact, it seems like they're taking their time with this. At the end of the trailer, they say, we're going to announce a release date later on. I think that's one of those games that is kind of looking to see what Ghost of Yotei is going to do, which I think that game is trying to see what Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to do. I think they really want to maximize their market share as far as being a new release character action game. So yeah, I'm excited to see when that's going to come out. Definitely go check out that trailer. I just wanted to highlight that. You know, I'm a big fan of character action games here on this channel, so I got to highlight anytime we get some new gameplay or news. And I think it's, again, I'm excited. I don't want to sound like an op, but I am excited to see what China can do in the game space. There's a lot going on, you know, with the Tencent classification, you know, them being classified as a Chinese military company and maybe possibly taking over Ubisoft. But these other developers like Game Science, I wish I knew the name of the developer for Lost Souls aside, S Game for Phantom Blade Zero. I mean, these unique development houses, they seem to have something to say. And I'm just really excited to be living in this era where we are getting games from places we once did not get games from. I think that's really good for the industry. And it's fantastic to hear that Black Myth Wukong's success is the reason why investors have poured even more money into Phantom Blade Zero. Since its reveal, it has always had its own identity. I think it has stuck in the minds of gamers who first saw that reveal trailer. That has been one of the most sought after PS5 games since it was revealed. I don't know I do kind of know what's going on, but I don't know why it's so difficult to port these games over to Xbox. And I know the Series S is the big roadblock there, but I wish Xbox players could have it. But I mean, considering what we're going to get into with this developer direct, 2025 doesn't look too shabby for you guys either, or for us. So yeah, moving right along. As I mentioned previously, we got my girl a PlayStation 5. So, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I just balled out. She had a Switch OLED that she plays pretty regularly, but has, you know, vocalized that there are just more of her type of games on PlayStation. She is a GTA girly. She claims to want to play Call of Duty and all that kind of stuff with me. I never fall for the bait. We going to play together, but I don't know if it's going to be lifelong that you're going to want to always play Call of Duty with me. I think what's going to happen is she's eventually going to find the games and areas that she wants to engage in and is going to forget about co-op experiences with me. But it's interesting because, well, number one, she's a GTA girly, so we're going to see how this works out. I know, you know, she's going to want GTA 6. She's going to want to play that on her own. And that's just going to be really interesting. I would really like her to have her own like channel space so we could like stream together and stuff like that. But that's just me and my wishful thinking. I'm really trying to, I wrote this down. I'm really just trying to delay the inevitable. And the inevitable is Sims. That's what I'm trying to delay. So I'm trying to introduce her to different experiences that I think she would enjoy. She asked me the other day about like what an RPG is. And it's like, well, my definition of RPG is different than my friend's definition of RPG because we engage with different types of RPGs. And I'm realizing in real time and us getting her this PlayStation 5 that finding and recommending games for people is, I guess, a bit of a love language for me on a friendly basis and with her. Because I loved like talking games with my friends and like literally recommending something to them based on their personality, based on who they are, and based on what they play. And I love when people do that for me. I think most gamers, I think it is gamers who love engaging in community, at least. I think that is one of their probably favorite parts of being a part of the gaming community, is discovering new experiences through each other. So we started off with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is going to get me into the Shadows previews. But I do want to talk about Odyssey a little bit. My lady is the type of person who would just love to play as a girl any opportunity she can get. And I'm not mad at her, because as you guys know, I love any and every opportunity I can get to play as a black man with long dreadlocks. So shout out to Dragon's Dogma 2. So yeah, so I was like, well, it's not even just the fact that you can play as Cassandra and she is like the canon character choice for that game. Oh, I didn't even get into explaining why I'm even wearing these blue light glasses, but I will after this story. But Odyssey might low-key be the best of the RPG trilogy. And I'm not really counting Mirage in that trilogy because it's not a... From what I understand, Ubisoft doesn't even consider that a mainline entry in the series. So let me turn off this monitor because I don't need it. But yeah, I recommend. I got Odyssey for her. We got you got GTA 5 also, but that actually she hasn't even installed it yet. Odyssey is just a really, really good time. It's really fun. Like number one, which I think the vast majority of gamers and developers, not the vast majority of developers, but definitely the vast majority of gamers and people who engage with the discourse of modern gaming, I feel like they've forgotten about the fact that like that should be the first question about any game we play is it fun? Because like from the moment they give you control, you start the game out playing as Leonidas, and this isn't really a spoiler, but Cassandra fits in the lineage somewhere. But you start the game as Leonidas, and it pretty much introduces you to just your combat abilities and yada yada, and what you will eventually come to feel like as a character with the abilities on every face button versus when you finally take control of Cassandra and you have none of those abilities and you just have your basic attacks. But especially once you take control of Cassandra, that game really just like the writing and the acting in that game is just really good if you take it for what it is. If you don't come into, which I don't understand why people do this anyway, and we'll get into it with the Shadows previews. If you don't come into a Ubisoft game expecting The Last of Us and you just try to see what they cooked up, more often than not, they're going to surprise you. Like, for every Far Cry 6, there's a Far Cry 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like, and I didn't play 4, but there have been people recently that have been trying to sell 4 to me as far as it being, good enough to engage with now. And 6 was just a waste of time, to be honest. But if you take and we said this last episode, if you just take the game for what it is, it's really enjoyable. And it's not a Witcher. It's not a, I don't know about Skyrim's performances per se, but like The Witcher, I think, is probably one of the best open world RPGs in terms of the performances of the characters that you meet. GTA 5 we could put on that level, but it's so scripted, it's not too RPG-ish. You know what I mean? But amazing performances, especially for an open world title. But Assassin's Creed Odyssey is up there. It's not S tier, but I'd give it B plus tier, maybe A tier on a good day. This is me personally. I really enjoy Odyssey for that. Like, I very seldom watch people play games anymore because I play and record so much nowadays, much more than I used to. I really just kind of, when I'm watching something, I'm engaging with gaming conversation a little more than gameplay. But I was watching her play Odyssey, and we set it up so that we could be in a party and like I could play my game and chat with her while she's playing her game or whatever. But me getting into this office was delayed because I was watching her play Odyssey, and it was really enjoyable because it's so funny. Like Cassandra and Marcos and the Cyclops and all that, just the first 3 hours of that game really set the tone for what you're about to experience overall in that story. And I'm like right at the end. I maybe have 2 or 3 story missions left in that game. My save, shout out to the Ubisoft Cloud, is still accessible. I don't fire it up much anymore, but I can tell you from firsthand experience that Odyssey has a lot of emotional depth, especially when it comes to the character of Cassandra, who I played as when I played Odyssey. So yeah, I'm excited for her because Ubisoft is so good at making open world light RPGs. It's not a full on like Witcher 3. What's another one? Cyberpunk type of. It's not a CD Projekt Red experience, but it does give you dialogue options and skill trees, and you kind of get to develop the player character the way you see fit. You know what I mean? And kind of respond and react to situations the way you would like to. I think it's a good entry point for people to get into that particular genre. And especially for people who don't like super complex games, like with a lot of different systems working in the background and inventory to keep up with and spells to keep up with and alchemy to keep up with. I think it's a good gateway to a well-designed open world. And I think Odyssey, even though I have a tremendously large space in my heart for Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey might be the best of the 3. And I'm talking Origins, Odyssey, and then Valhalla. I think Valhalla is just too bloated, even though it does have some pretty good performances and some pretty good gameplay for an Assassin's Creed game. It's just so much going on like in the world that it can be tough to engage with. Odyssey does get really big, but they make it very easy to ignore how large that game is because of how the story moves and how it moves you throughout the open world. I think that's what Origins and Odyssey did best, was take you to all of these unique locations. So I'm excited for her. If you guys have any suggestions for like co-op experiences that you know are on PlayStation, please let me know, because she's not going to play Ghost Recon Breakpoint with me and Far Cry 5, and we'll definitely play GTA 5. That stream is coming to this channel for sure because she gets busy on Grand Theft Auto. But finishing It Takes Two kind of has me in the mind for something a little different than my normal just type of video game that I engage with, which, like, if you look through my library, both digitally and physical, there's a through line, and it is action gameplay. So, again, just like any recommendations you guys might have, put them in the comments for me, because I really liked it. It Takes Two. I liked the story of that game. I loved the gameplay of that game, and I really loved playing with her. Because it's fun to play a game with somebody who is also having fun with the game, and they're not just doing it because, you know, it's something you want to do, or, you know, from a quality time point of view, it's also like both of you are having an equal amount of enjoyment out of this game. That was really dope. So right now I got like Overcooked 2 in that sort of wish list or whatever. We'll probably engage with that at some point. But yeah, just a little quick hit. One last quick hit that I didn't have written down, but I might have brought it up in this episode's intro. I recorded that intro like 7 times. But Dragon Age the Veilguard appears to be a failure. It seems that only 1.5 million players have, quote, engaged with Dragon Age, which doesn't necessarily mean that they sold 1.5 million copies. This includes the verbiage allows it to include people who may have downloaded trials through EA Play and whatnot. So I don't know. I mean, like I covered that game. I previewed it. I covered the previews of that game. I played it a little bit myself. Told you guys about it. Also told you that I fell off because not really interested at the time that I was playing it. I actually have been gifted a copy of the Veilguard. Someone that I see I don't see them often, but someone in the store just kind of continuously let me know that Veilguard might be the type of game for me because of its action combat. And I was honest with them and I told them I didn't even let the game open up fully before I stopped playing it. Like, I stopped playing it as it gave me an opportunity to accept side missions. So I never accepted the first side mission before I stopped playing it. I did like the first 3 or 4 main story missions, which amounts to about maybe 4.5, 5 hours of gameplay. I know it opens up. I don't know. At the time, it just felt kind of vanilla. And there's something to be said about the level of cachet that the BioWare name carries nowadays. I don't think it draws players the way it used to, because ever since Mass Effect 3, they have given us a lot of mid or trash. In the case of Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem is one of my favorite failures. I like that game, but you do get to a point in that game where there's a wall that for whatever reason, it is designed in a way to where you cannot get over it. I'm not talking about a physical wall. I'm talking about like a story wall where you're supposed to collect these resources and do this checklist, and it makes no sense. And it's kind of almost impossible to get through that point now in the game because of how it's designed. A game that was just completely abandoned, Concord style, much later than Concord, but still abandoned. You can download Destiny 2 right now and engage with all of its content. It's very difficult to engage with all of the content of Anthem, so that didn't go over so well. Dragon Age Inquisition, it won Game of the Year, but in a year that was notoriously pretty mid anyway. And I'm not trying to shit on Dragon Age or BioWare, but the facts are the facts. Mass Effect 3 was just an incredible high. Just an achievement in capping off one of the best sci-fi trilogies in gaming, arguably the best trilogy, depending on who you're talking to. There are people who would defend that game as the best sci-fi trilogy in 21st century gaming. I mean, maybe it's, Halo trilogy might be competing with it, but when we're talking RPG trilogies, it's up there. And Dragon Age Origins has a strong, beyond cult following. Dragon Age 2, I feel like, has a cult following. Inquisition has a strong cult following, but they really taper off after Inquisition between Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda. So it stands to reason that they're not going to sell well, even with the Dragon Age name. They're not going to be able to defeat the controversy that came with the diversity and inclusion of the game, frankly, that causes controversy in today's state of gaming. And in that, I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is going to overpower the controversy surrounding having a black samurai as the main character. Dragon Age and BioWare just don't have the name cachet to do that. And so you end up barely moving 1 million copies through the holiday season. With a budget like that, you needed to probably have moved closer to 2 million copies by now. So it's unfortunate, but the real problem is that these games cost exorbitant amounts of money, and there are better games that exist than these super huge budget games. Sometimes they are in the same genre. I'm thinking of a Sea of Thieves over Skull and Bones. It's just in the same way that, like, I think there's a little bit of money laundering going on in the film industry, because why do these $300 million movies like Red One look worse than $15 million movies like Godzilla Minus One? It doesn't make sense. So something sinister has to be happening. And I think it is sinister to not be sharing these, but the budget, your game should be $200 million and your developers not making more than a person at the same position in a different place. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like the mailroom guy on Dragon Age, the Veilguard, should be making more than the mailroom guy on Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn. But if that's not happening, then I think that's probably the reason why the quality of some of these games is not matching their exorbitant budgets. Dragon Age, The Veilguard has to be a really expensive game. Number one, for how long it took to develop. Number two, they pivoted 2, maybe 3 different times in its development. At one point, it was a live service MMO. You know what I'm saying? So changing the identity of a video game costs money because people, like, resources were spent on developing the identity that came before. So I don't know what's happening behind closed doors with some of these really large budget games. I mean, if there's a little bit of corruption in terms of where the money is going with a game like Destiny 2, that has to be happening in some of these games that are failing, in games that, like, why is Concord $400 million? And then so easy to just pull off the market within 2 weeks. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That should hurt a company a little bit more. Shoot, not on the paper, but it just has me thinking. Sony just canceled like 6 games that were apparently live service. Behind the failure of Concord and probably just looking at the industry, nobody wants these games. You have some of your better in-house studios working on live service games that nobody is asking for. Let Bluepoint make their own game or remaster another one instead of having them use their talent on a live service title that you're just going to cancel. I'm pretty sure that Horizon MMO was among those 6 games that was canceled. Like, it's just getting ridiculous. And now you have analysts saying that developers and publishers are hoping that Rockstar charges us $100 for GTA 6. We know why they want them to charge $100 for GTA 6. Number one, because you and I are going to pay $100 for GTA 6. If there's one game that any of us are going to pay $100 for the base standard edition of a video game, it is Grand Theft Auto 6. Coming off the heels of Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA Online, it's not unreasonable to pay $100 for the next Grand Theft Auto because we know we are probably going to get a 10 out of 10 immaculate experience. It does not, however, mean that you, Electronic Arts, can charge me $100 for Mass Effect 4 or whatever it's going to be called. I'm not giving you $100 for that. Because you and BioWare have spent the last 3 games literally tarnishing your relationship with me. And I'm not even as hard on BioWare as some of those people who were offended by the they-them inclusion were. That didn't offend me at all. In fact, when I covered that game, I defended its inclusion of non-binary identity and gender fluidity and all that kind of stuff. I didn't think that affected, it doesn't affect the gameplay at all, to be honest with you. It just gives the player more choice about who they want to be. But there was a lot of crying and whining. And in that particular case, again, your brand was not strong enough to overpower the crying and whining. So don't you dare think that the next time you and BioWare give us a $200 or $300 million RPG, that you can charge me $100 for it. Because you're going to end up putting out another report that says only 1.5 million players engaged with Mass Effect 4. And then I've said this about GTA 6. GTA can charge me $80. They could charge me $89. It's a $2 billion game. And I think it's interesting that the story is not rumors are circulating that GTA 6 may cost $100. It is analysts suggest that developers and publishers would like Rockstar to charge us $100 so that maybe they can get it off too. I recognize that the cost of game development is ballooning, but the quality, like, listen, for every Last of Us Part 2, a lot of that gameplay has been making the rounds in my algorithm, at least, just about how realistic it was and, how visceral those gunfights are. And they are, just from looking at them. But for every Last of Us Part 2, we're not, every game is not coming out like that. Concord did nothing just visually that made me feel like I was playing a $400 million game. I'll tell you a game that did do that wasn't Grand Theft Auto, the first Destiny in 2013. It was rumored that was a $500 million project. I mean, that game came out on 4 different consoles, the 360, the Xbox One, the PS3, and the PS4. And its matchmaking and the way it put players together and the shared world shooter, just the entire aesthetic of it all, most people felt like they were playing a game that was of the future, that was forward facing. That doesn't happen very often. And it doesn't have to happen often for me to engage with games. We're going to get into South of Midnight later. That don't look like a AAA title, but it's a game I'm buying day one. It's not a AAA title. It's $39.99. Helldivers 2 is not a AAA title. You know what I'm saying? Like, every game doesn't have to be like Spider-Man 2 has a ridiculous cost. And if you talk to anybody who is a true fan of I'm not going to say true, but is a real fan of the current Insomniac Spider-Man games, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone that's going to say Spider-Man 2 is my favorite of the three. Like Spider-Man remastered on the PS5 Pro, just graphically and all that kind of stuff is almost, Spider-Man 2 does a lot of great things, but in terms of, forget graphics. In terms of the gameplay and the story, Spider-Man Remastered is a better game than Spider-Man 2. When I finished Spider-Man 2, I won't speak for anybody else. When I finished Spider-Man 2, I did not feel like I got a complete experience out of that game. I beat that game in less than 20 hours. It felt rushed. Its biggest and best moments happen in the first 10 hours of the game. So the first 30 to 50% of that game. And it's just like, I found myself just in the last hours, like the last 4 or 5 hours, just like ready for it to be over because it was presenting itself like it was about to end. So I was like, well, I'm just ready for it to end now because you're telling me you have nothing more to offer me. Why does that? I want to know. And there were big set pieces in that game. Don't get me wrong. There was an improvement in the graphical technology. Do not get me wrong. But I want to know why that game cost $150 million more than the first Spider-Man did. $200 million more than the first Spider-Man did. I want to know. Because I don't feel like I got that. And if you were to have asked me for $100 for Spider-Man 2 and I gave you $100 for Spider-Man 2 and I beat that game the way I beat it, I would have felt shortchanged. And it's not even about the length. It's just the way that they end that game. It's so abrupt. It's almost like violent, like not in terms of the content, but in terms of how jarring it is, how that game just ends. It just ends. Suddenly starts wrapping up story arcs that still needed some fleshing out. It makes no sense. And then we start introducing new characters at the end. So my hope is that GTA 6 does not cost $99.99 day one. Mostly because it's going to do what it do. Those of us who had to ask our parents to buy us GTA 5 can now buy GTA 6. And I think there's a reason I think that's part of the reason why this game has taken this long to come out. Let's wait till we can add more buyers to the immediate first day pool with this being an M-rated title. You're going to get them. You're going to get every generation of gamer that can legally buy that game. Every generation of gamer is going to be buying that game day one. And the amount of people you're going to lose in charging $100 is going to be minuscule in terms of the profits you're going to make in the first 3 days of that game's release at $100 a pop. So my hope is that it doesn't cost $100, not even because I'm unwilling to pay that for GTA 6, but I am incredibly unwilling to pay literally any other developer $100 day one for their video game. I'm not paying $100 day one for Ghost of Yote. Like, it would take some strong convincing for me to do that. And I am very excited for that game. I'm not paying $100 day one for a base standard edition of Doom: The Dark Ages. And that is one of my most anticipated games of the year, but I'm not doing it. So, I don't know. But anyway, enough all the money hoopla, man. Let's get to the fun parts of this episode, bro, because I told you guys we're not doing Culture War on this channel unless it's like just really egregious and it just has to be covered. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting that when we get down to the nitty gritty, when we get down to the brass tacks, that everybody that got a chance to preview Shadows either really enjoyed it or at the minimum is like, well, It's an Assassin's Creed title, and it seems to be the most refined RPG Assassin's Creed to date. So if you've liked what they've done so far, you're going to really enjoy what they're about to do. That seems to be the general consensus of Shadows after the preview event they had last week. Hey, it's more of what you like. It's more of what you like. It's more of what you loved before. It's a little bit less of what you didn't like. And it seems like from the preview that we played, and this is me paraphrasing the various journalists that I've engaged with, it seems like from the previews that we played, story looks pretty compelling. There's a strong case for Yasuke being here. And I'm excited to see all the pieces get put together. And again, in watching her play Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and that was the day after I just did my deep dive with all of these Shadows previews. I think that game is going to do what it's setting out to do. Am I biased? Probably. I already have Shadows posters on my wall. This will be a Shadows setup when it's time to stream that game. I want to play that game. I will be playing that game with excitement, with gladness that it's finally here. I will not be looking for cracks. I will not be looking for glitches. I won't be looking for screen grabs to throw on Twitter to say, there's watermelons in the wrong season. I don't care about that, actually. How well can you immerse me in the Japan that you have built? That's what I'm looking for. That's what I look for with every Assassin's Creed game. And I just think it's really interesting that at the end of the day, none of that hoopla y'all were talking about in May or June of last year, whenever that game got revealed, even matters anymore. That people are saying, yo, it's pretty polished. And the immersive mode is kind of cool, hearing Portuguese and Japanese. That some of the characters are kind of interesting. The models look really good. The world is gorgeous. The weather systems. It's like I'm just regurgitating what I've heard from people that I trust, from people who have been covering games for just hundreds of times longer than I've been covering games, which is not even a year. People that I've trusted since I was 19, 20 years old. I'm 28. So I find it really interesting that the previews have kind of been good. So let's get into it, man. Let's what did Ubisoft now? I didn't get to preview the game, so I'm not going to do a whole bunch of I'm not going to cover every system and every weapon and this and this and that. I just got a bullet point list I'm going to go through. This is the most handwritten notes I have for today's episode, but I didn't get to play the game. I'm just regurgitating to you what I saw of others who did get to play the game. So this preview seems to... Well, let me just read what I wrote down. Midway through January, various press were invited to preview Shadows, either on campus or via remote play. Meaning the people who played it remote play were streaming it to their homes in 1080p, 60 FPS. So a lot of the recordings that you can go and find of these previews are not indicative of the final quality of the game. In fact, the only person I know who has a hard recording of actual raw gameplay is Luke Stevens, who is not my favorite video game journalist because he tends to toe the line between good journalism and also making 3-hour videos about why he hates a particular game, which I just think that's corny. And most of the time he doesn't really have anything good to say. But I do take advantage when I'm trying to parse through information, parse through previews. I take advantage of the fact that he's one of the influencers that they allow to preview games. And his recordings were actually pretty good. But anyway, the previews become redundant the more that you watch and listen to them. I will try to parse through the good, the bad, and the questionable. There was also a new story trailer released, which honestly has me more hyped for the game than the gameplay previews, because if you know the history of Yasuke, and there is a history of Yasuke, and shout out to Naoe, because I'm actually really excited to play as her. Well, all the controversy surrounds the Black Samurai that's going to be in the video game Assassin's Creed Shadows. that was always historical fiction. But anyway, if you know the history of Yasuke, a lot of the history of who he was becomes muddy / non-existent after a certain point. That whatever fallout happens with Lord Nobunaga, I think is Nobunaga, the lord that takes him in. Once that fallout happens, it's just we don't know what happens with him. And that seems to be because some speculation says that they sold him back to the Jesuits. People who overtook Nobunaga, that they sold him out to the Jesuits, that he just ran away, that he became a Ronin, whatever, yada, yada, yada. So we don't know what happens. And he's about 27, 28 years old around that time. And we get if you look at the story trailer and also in some of the gameplay previews, we see how he ended up from being in captivity under the Portuguese to serving Nobunaga to becoming his own character. What am I getting at? Yeah, well, I guess what I'm getting at is how interesting that is to me, because that seems to be the kicking off point for the story of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Is that once they say do whatever, there's literally a line. It says just get rid of the Black Samurai, give him back to the Jesuits or whatever. That seems to be the beginning of his assassin tale. I think that's super fly in terms of doing the historical fiction thing that they have always done since the first Assassin's Creed game. Like, I'm not a Japanese historian, but it does there. When you weed out the hate mongering blue checks and their quote tweets and their screen grabs and whatever, I don't really see any official Japanese historians disputing the aesthetic and setting of this game. Ubisoft has always done such an immaculate job at building their historical world, so much so that because people use these games in their history teachings, they create completely separate modes for people who own the game called the Discovery Mode, where you can move through the world that they built for the game, and they teach you history lessons with it. And people use it in their classrooms. They've been doing this since 2017 with Assassin's Creed Origins. I don't feel like they're going to all of a sudden not know how to give us an accurate representation of this particular period of feudal Japan. I don't understand why that was ever even a concern for real, other than, it just being racially motivated. I don't understand why that ever came into question. Their ancient Greece is immaculate. Their ancient Egypt is immaculate. Their Norway and England is immaculate. Why is their Baghdad is awesome. It's amazing in Mirage. Why all of a sudden is Shadows going to be the one with all of the historical inconsistencies? I'm not going to get into the culture war side, but that's racism. It's racism, and I don't even want to talk about it anymore. But that's why. So, and again, back to watching her play Odyssey and seeing these gameplay previews, I myself am just really excited to engage with Japan the Ubisoft way. I really like what Sucker Punch did in Ghost of Tsushima. I think it's one of the best games on PS4. It's a top 3 PS4 game, arguably. I'm really excited for what Ubisoft is going to do. I like finding the new, what are they called? Synchronization points, the little eagle points, these high points, which still exist. I'm excited to find those. I'm excited to engage with different side characters, even though their animations may be lesser than the main characters during certain cutscenes. Like, that doesn't really bother me. I know the formula of these games. I know how it's going to play. I just want to play it. I just don't know how the story is going to play out. And I don't know all of the secrets and surprises they have in store for us in the world that they're building. But I know how it's going to play. I know it's going to be a refinement of all of the systems that worked and did not work in the last 3 mainline entries. I like that the homestead is going to be more customizable. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just think it's really interesting. I've been really excited about recording this episode to tell you guys, I think it's really interesting that all the previews were like the same they always are with Assassin's Creed, which is, yo, this is kind of cool. And at worst, like, we'll see. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's interesting. And that there was nobody like, this is garbage, except for people that were rage baiting. So anyway, Let's start with our two protagonists. I did see a couple of complaints about Yasuke being like a heavy, just brute force warrior, and Naoe kind of being the epitome of parkour and stealth and yada yada. And why can't I do the same things with Yasuke that I can with Naoe? Me personally, and this is just your friend Director Warren, I am excited about the fact that I have to think critically with why I would be this character in this scenario versus this character in that scenario. Because just from what I've learned through these previews, I know who is going to be my Explore character, and I know who's going to be my like main story scenario character. Even though they both are really interesting to me. Because they play very differently in combat and exploration. This is not a Syndicate or Odyssey situation. And I reference Odyssey and Valhalla in that you get to pick male or female characters, but they both play the exact same. And in Syndicate, you have Jacob and Evie, but they're pretty much the same character, just different skins that you get to swap into. And that was the last time you had two protagonists in the same, you know, you either get one or the other in Odyssey and Valhalla, but you play as both of them in Syndicate. And I think it's really exciting that, you know, Naoe is nimble and sleek, flipping from one rooftop to the next with a grappling hook for increased verticality. And then you have Yasuke, who is more of a true samurai warrior. He's bulky, he's strong, he's armored. He's not as nimble as Naoe, and he cannot reach every viewpoint. Certain journalists would reference the fact that when you pull up to like one of those synchronization viewpoints as Yasuke, he might say, he would say something along the lines of, this is something Naoe needs to explore. I'm fine with that, especially if it only takes 3 seconds to change characters. I don't know if some of y'all are too young to remember how slow it was to change from Trevor to Franklin in GTA 5 in 2013. It wasn't the fastest change in the world. And now we live in the age of the SSD. So if it takes 3 seconds and 3 seconds, including that brief classic Animus loading screen to go from Yasuke to Naoe, and I'm right there in the same spot that I left off, I'm not mad at that. Because again, and this is the thing, before I get into Yasuke, this is the thing. Samurai are warriors. Don't let Ghost of Tsushima fool you. That was the conflict within Jin, was leaving behind, not necessarily leaving behind some of the samurai ways, because there was, you know, the standoffs and all that sort of thing, and just direct, straight up sword fighting. But a lot of that Ghost gameplay is antithetical to what a samurai is. So, and I think that might be part of the reason, you know, Jin being who he is part of the reason why they chose Yasuke instead of Jin, because you have Naoe who can be. Ubisoft has always prioritized diversity in their games, so it doesn't surprise me that they have a female shinobi. You know, it doesn't surprise me that they have a black samurai. They would have. Anyway, so. But I think if Ubisoft developing the Assassin's Creed games the way that they do, they're going to be true to the roles that they are establishing for the player character. So if this is a samurai, yes, he's going to be super bulky. This is not going to be your primary character for stealth, for night missions. This is who you want when you got to face 7 or 8 people at once. You can do that with Naoe, but it's going to be way harder because she is nimble. She is sleek. She is not heavily armored. She is acrobatic. So she is for your parkour. She is for your stealth. She is for the verticality, the vertical exploration, and world exploration also. But she is not meant to take down 10 people by herself. That's not her strength. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you can grow into that as a character and develop her that way through the skill trees and yada yada. But the better warrior option is always going to be the samurai. And part of who Yasuke was, and part of what was so fascinating about him from Nobunaga's, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but Nobunaga's point of view was how big and strong Yasuke was. So I like hearing that is a thing, that he's a little bit slower and heavier and that it can be felt in the controller doesn't bother me, because that is different than him not controlling well, which is not something I heard throughout all of these previews. So that to me is not a real complaint, but some people did complain about that. Whatever. Naoe can't block like Yasuke, but her dodges and rolls are lighter and faster. So it's just, you know what I mean? It's different sliders. You know, it's like creating a character in NBA 2K or in Madden. You know, like your running back is going to be a better just pure runner than probably your quarterback. Your wide receiver might be a better pure runner than your cornerback, but your cornerback might have much better awareness than your wide receiver. It's just different sliders. So I really like that because I think that feeds directly into the combat. They say, Ubisoft says they're trying to give us more ego-driven fights, right? So enemies are more confident in large groups and become less so as you dispatch them. So if you're playing as this big burly samurai and you're having to deal with a couple of heavies and 4 minis, and you take out the first heavy, and then maybe the second heavy, them last 4 minis is probably they're going to display behavior that says, oh, damn, we're stuck now. We don't want to stuck with you. And I like that. I like that a lot in Ghost of Tsushima. If they can pull that off in Shadows, one of my favorite game journalist personalities, Carrick at ACG, would really hope to be on your podcast this year. He kind of talked about the fact that he didn't see too much of that, to see too much of the ego-driven nature of the battles that Ubisoft says we should expect in the game. But this is a preview build. This is not the final build. So we'll see how that goes. He didn't see a lot of it. But he was also kind of, you know, which is why he's one of my favorite. He was also honest in the fact that, like, in the heat of the moment, I wasn't really looking for that also anyway. But it didn't jump out at me if it did happen. So we'll see how that goes. The fights are really brutal and they appear to be more tactical than traditional RPG Assassin's Creed. So, because especially Odyssey and Origins, they're just straight hack and slash and like use your abilities, yada yada. Valhalla, to me, has the worst of the 3 in terms of combat because it just feels so paperweighty and empty. So I'm really happy to hear that the combat in Shadows is a lot more visceral. It's a lot just what's the word I'm looking for? You can just see more of the impact to the animations and the feelings and the controllers than you could in past open world Assassin's Creed games or RPG Assassin's Creed games. And the brutality of it, I think, is just a distinct bullet point when it comes to feudal Japan and just samurai combat and just combat during that period. So I'm kind of happy to hear how brutal it is and how brutal it plays, because a lot of us were fooled into thinking Valhalla was going to be that. And I don't want to diss on it because I've told you guys before, I have every piece of DLC for that game and I fully intend on playing every part of Valhalla. It's still an Assassin's Creed game, which means it's still a great world simulator. But that combat, even though there is the occasional just true brutal Viking animation, it just doesn't feel that way. And in the trailers that came out, I remember the marketing for that game. We thought that's what we were going to get. And when we played it, it didn't feel that way. So it's exciting for me to hear that it feels that way in a preview build. Because I think by March 20th, there are going to be a couple of patches for sure, but I think we're going to get probably the most polished day one Assassin's Creed experience since Origins. Okay. So getting into the weapons are more unique to the characters. You know, you've got swords and massive clubs for Yasuke. You've got a lot of throwables for Naoe, like kunai and stuff like that. Yasuke was the only character I saw with a rifle that doesn't really kind of have the same stealth application as, say, a bow and arrow, but does seem to have a tremendous amount of stopping power. But at the same time, you're very limited in your movement. And so it seems like one of those weapons that you have to time really well when you're going to use it in the middle of a battle. But each character has tools and weapons suited to them. She's got that like chain mace thing. If you guys have seen Kill Bill Volume 1, you know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm really excited to use with Naoe. I think that's her grappling hook also, but she can use it in combat. I think it's really dope that both of these characters have their own unique identities. When have we ever got that in an Assassin's Creed game? Like, personality aside, because Jacob and Evie are great. I don't know if Alexios, if his personality is any different from Cassandra, other than that it's male coded versus female coded. Eivor, female and male Eivor are literally the exact same to me. But I think it's really cool that we're getting two characters with like they have no choice but to have distinct personalities, because you have a female protagonist in Naue, and that's a different dynamic in feudal Japan. And then you have a tall, strong black man in Yasuke, a literal outsider wearing samurai armor. So you got, not only do you have unique skins, if you will, for these two characters, you also it's deeper than you think in terms of your approach to combat scenarios with both characters. You are literally going to play differently. You are going to think differently as the player, depending on who you are controlling. And then taking it a step further with the weapons and the abilities that these characters have. There's not a lot to complain about with this game. If it's super bloated, if it's super bloated, if the story, tapers off, if it's slow, if it's not engaging, that's one thing. But the formula of Assassin's Creed, this appears to me to be incredibly refined and polished just from a systems point of view, from a presentation point of view. And we'll see how it all comes together. It looks, in some of the gameplay videos, it looks like there's a stagger meter. The animations of these characters, the combat is really weighty. So I'm really hyped to see how that goes. Moving on to exploration. The map is larger than Origins, but smaller than Valhalla, which is great. It appears to have the classic level gating of Origins and Odyssey that I prefer over the Destiny type power levels of Valhalla. I don't really like it. Just because I'm level 25, like 10 minutes into the game. Now I'm like level 102. What does this even mean? And I still have like 60 hours. Like, I don't know. I don't like that. I like the classic, like max 50, like max 40 to 50, max level 40 to 50. I like that. I prefer that over like power levels just don't work to me like the way they do in a Destiny or any sort of looter shooter. They don't really work to me like in an open world action RPG. So I don't know. I don't like that. But we've got a map that's not broken up by like oceans or waterways or whatever. It's just a pure landmass. I like that. I do like the water-based exploration in Valhalla once you are able to go to certain places. But the way the regions, because this is Quebec and this is the team that gave us Origins and Odyssey, the way the regions are set up in those games, they are so distinct. Like from the moment you cross the border of one region to the next, the game lets you know, number one. But number two, the flavor of that region is tweaked just a little bit so you can feel the difference. Like there's a difference in Siwa and Memphis and Assassin's Creed Origins. There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between Memphis and Alexandria in Origins. Like go back and play that game. Even though it takes place in the desert, the locations are there's a lot of variety in the locations. And because you have more diversity in the biomes of a Japanese map, a team like that I think can do a lot with it. So I'm glad to have them, because Origins is like the perfect size for somebody looking for a large scale adventure. It's the perfect size because once you conquer it and you've got your fast travel points and yada, 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 it's nothing. But the way that Assassin's Creed stories take you through their worlds, I think is one of the strongest parts of these RPG Assassin's Creeds, even in Valhalla. Like going from Norway to England is really dope. Like that, because they're just two completely different places. And nobody does a better job at letting you know that you're in a completely different place than where you were. In terms of in a historical context, nobody does that better than Ubisoft, in my humble opinion. There is no animal hunting in this game, but there are opportunities to paint them. I like when games steal from each other. Like, we're not trying to make Ghost of Tsushima 2 or 1.5, but we like that little meditation stuff y'all are doing over there. So, you know what? And I don't know, is this a Japanese thing that we can't hunt the animals? Because I don't think you can hunt animals in Ghost of Tsushima either. And if it is a Japanese thing, I think that's fine. I listen, I'm not the animal slayer. And I like the idea of finding the resources I need to craft and all that kind of stuff. I like finding that through the forts and the enemy bases that we fight through. I like that. That's honestly one of my favorite parts of Valhalla is that, you know, the way they reward you with resources when you take over a certain spot. But yeah, I don't know if that's like just a thing that Western developers do out of respect for Japan. They just don't allow you to kill the animals over there. But there are certain opportunities where you'll see a unique animal and you'll have to approach it slowly. And then there's like a painting mini game. Naoe has her own meditative type of mini games. Yasuke will have his own. Apparently, I think he might have some bamboo cutting mini game or something going on with him. I think he might have the haiku. No, now he might have the haiku mini game. But I like that they've stolen a little bit of the Ghost of Tsushima sauce, because those are action, combat, and story aside, and graphical presentation aside. The meditative, just slower moments of Ghost of Tsushima are some of the best moments of that game. So, in terms of the way a Assassin's Creed game allows you to explore, discovering those dynamic meditative moments, I think is really dope. And I'm glad that if they're going to steal something from any game, that it's that. No eagle. And listen, I'm not going to say I'm not a big fan of that choice. I'm just saying I heavily leaned on the eagle in every other Assassin's Creed RPG title that's come out. So I kind of do like the idea of them wanting to force us into manually surveying the landscape. Even when you do a viewpoint, when you do a synchronization point, you get the 360-degree spin of the world around you. You do get that 360-degree view. But once it's finished, you have to kind of manually aim from the perspective of your player character, which most of the time will probably be Naoe on those synchronization points. But you have to manually survey the land and see where the treasure is and the question mark points and yada yada. You can mark them from that place. They're not going to immediately populate your compass, but they will be on your map. But you do kind of have to manually survey. And then when you are, say, in an enemy base, you have to manually survey and manually tag and mark enemies and yada yada. So I don't mind that. I'm at the age now where I am looking for a more immersive experience, less on my HUD, that sort of thing. And to reference another Ubisoft game, one of the better parts of Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the ability to take away certain handicaps. So I'm very curious to see how customizable the accessibility is going to be as far as things like that in this game is, because Ubisoft normally is kind of forward facing when it comes to the customization of your heads up display and certain like health systems and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes. But I did write that overall impressions, this appears to be a refinement of the AC RPG formula. For me, the narrative has hooked me. I talked about, particularly not Yasuke's story, I talked about just that setup that we are picking up where there is nothing written on him. That is really dope. Especially if they, which I know they have, if they wrote this story with the care and dedication that I think they have, I think we are in for something special. So we'll see how that goes. The combat and exploration looks great. You have to be more intentional with every system of the game. This will be the first true next-gen / current-gen Assassin's Creed experience, and it seems to have most journalists cautiously optimistic, which is fine for me. It's still Ubisoft, so I totally understand being cautiously optimistic. It's an Assassin's Creed game, so I totally understand being cautiously optimistic. But all signs point to an 8 out of 10 game, which an 8 out of 10 Assassin's Creed is a good time. If this is like a 9 out of 10, this will be an Assassin's Creed we talk about for years and years to come. But if this is like an Odyssey type situation or an Origins, which a lot of people weren't a fan of when it first came out, but looking back, that is one of the better, just overall Assassin's Creed games that ever came out. I'm cool with that. And I'm confident that they're going to be able to pull that off considering the developer that they are. So, yeah. That's my take on the Assassin's Creed Shadows previews. I'm trying to get my hands on that collector's edition. I want that statue. I need that statue in here. Yasuke and Naoe, like with the back to back. Yeah, I need that, bro. I need that. Definitely keep your eyes peeled on this channel. You already know I'm going to be streaming that game. Hella. That's my first big release, which is why I've been playing these little boo-boo behind games. Like, they're not boo-boo, but just these little $5 bin games, like in the meanwhile. Days Gone, you're not a $5 bin game. I love you, but you know, you're not expensive. So, yeah. So anyway, let's get into this Xbox Developer Direct, because I'm hyped, bro. Xbox is trying. They're trying their best, and they have one of the worst just fanboy hives. All fanboy hives of any like Nintendo, PlayStation, whatever. They all suck. But like Xbox, just like like the people who make Xbox podcasts, like they're the worst. They're just the worst podcasts to listen to, because like it's just people that it's like when it comes to politics, it's like and I might have more liberal policies than a normal person, but it's just my beef with liberals, right? Like you just love morally dunking on conservatives. You're not trying to find a solution. It's the same thing with Xbox players. They just love like just morally dunking on PlayStation. Oh, 6 games got canceled. Like, bro, that's not good for you either. In the long run, that's not good for you either. You know, that's a developer that could have been working on something decent that would have encouraged competition in the market, and then maybe you get something equivalent on your platform and yada yada. That's not good for you either. So they just don't have the best people who are vocal about being Xbox loyalists. I came up on Xbox, so I have more of a love and appreciation for Xbox than I do for PlayStation, even though I am having a wonderful time on the PS5 Pro. It's in my DNA. My uncle put me on Xbox, and I've just been an Xbox guy ever since. I just have been playing way more PlayStation this particular generation. The Xbox One X, to me, is a top 5 all-time video game console. In terms of what it brought to us technologically, playing on that console, yada, it's just one of the best console experiences I ever had. And I had a Nintendo 64, so I think I'm a good authority on that for my age bracket or whatever. But this Developer Direct, man, I like that they're not going true third party. They're towing the line between hardware developer and third party publisher. Because, you know, some of these games that I'm about to talk about, they're going to be on PlayStation. But I'm glad that they're games that are being published by Xbox Game Studios. I'm glad that these are marquee experiences that can go toe to toe with whatever PlayStation thinks they're doing. Because PlayStation don't got nothing better than Doom to me. They don't got a shooter that can compete with Doom. Helldivers ain't competing with Doom in terms of how it feels to shoot something. So I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them in that regard. So let's get into this Developer Direct, man. In the same day. Was it the same day? Yeah, the same day that all these previews went live, Xbox live streamed a Developer Direct. I gotta shout them out for a 4K 60 FPS live stream that had immaculate quality. It was an obvious like pre-recorded video file that they were just like, was it a premiere? It was broadcasting live, but it was like it was just like 4K file quality. It wasn't like a 4K stream quality, if that makes sense. So I gotta applaud them for that. At least having a super high quality file and streaming it in 4K 60 FPS from wherever they streamed it from. It was an amazing presentation. It was brief. It was 58 minutes long, which gave the 4 developers that they highlighted ample time to just engage with their respective audiences. I'm going to go in order of what they presented. What did they start with? They might have started with South of Midnight. So you know what? I'm just going to go in order of what I have the least amount of, from least to most details on. Starting with South of Midnight. We finally got a release date. Now, this is shaping up to be what looks like a digital-only release, which is not my favorite thing in the world. I would have loved to have owned a piece of the history that is South of Midnight. I would love to have owned a physical copy of a game that is Southern Gothic folktale told with an incredible art style and with a lot of reverence for the Deep South and the characters that are being portrayed. I would have loved to have had a physical copy of that game. I will be buying it day one. It's only $40. That's an easy buy. Even if I don't get to play it day one, that's an easy buy. I didn't really write much down because I want to save all of my thoughts for that particular game when I actually get to play it. But they showed us a lot of gameplay. So we got a better look at like the stop motion animation style, and it looks really good. The first time I looked at it, it was a little jarring. I was like, dang, are we seeing like dips in the frame rate or whatever? And like when I just rewatched it before I recorded this, I was like, oh, that's the stylistic choice, and it actually looks a lot better than what I initially remembered. This game has incredible creature and world design, like the catfish that you're supposed to meet at the start of the game, Hazel herself, all of the environments they showcased. I love a game that's got different costumes, man. It looks like we're going to at least be able to upgrade or weave together different costumes for Hazel that maybe might have different abilities. But the enemies that I saw, the bosses that I saw, the worlds that she moves through, just really great design. It just looks really great. Like, this is a game that if I did not have, I would love to watch someone else play. I would love to watch someone stream a game like this. And again, I know people don't like when we get into identity politics. I did not grow up with a game with this many black people in it. And I think it is really dope that young black boys, but especially young black girls, get to engage with a fantasy story like this with a character like Hazel as the protagonist, because her design is just really great. Like, she just looks like an angsty teenager that just wants to be outside and wants a relationship with her mom, but they both got what they got going on and all that. It looks really sincere and looks really genuine. And in terms of the feel of the story, but also just the visual design of Hazel and the world around her. It looks like a love letter to the Bayou. It looks like just a love letter to the Bayou. And I'm really excited for it. I'm really, really excited for that game. $40, man. Come on, bro. Just a pure single player story adventure. I don't know what kind of content they can give us behind its initial release. If they have any, dope. If they don't, fine with me too. I'm excited for, and this seems to be the messaging of the entire developer direct. I am excited for a complete single player experience. I don't want to hop online every time I play the latest video game. And I like Marvel Rivals. I like that game a lot. I just don't want to do that all the time. I like being in my own little world. I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth right now, and I'm understanding. I'm 6 hours into it. Well, not even. I'm really like 4.5 hours into it. And I understand why people love that game. And that game hasn't even fully opened up for me. I haven't got to the first mini game yet. But the musical cues and the characters and your party and who you are as Cloud and the story happening around you. Like, I love just a complete single player experience. I think that complete single player experiences are the bedrock of video games. Super Mario, Metroid, Castlevania, Final Fantasy. Like, what am I thinking about? Just Contra, stuff like that. Like, single player experiences to me should always be priority with development. And I hate that because of major successes like Fortnite, that the big companies felt like everything had to be online and connected and yada, yada, yada. And it's for the sake of revenue, but it's just like, bro, there are certain games, like there are games I'm getting Doom the Dark Ages $70 day one. No question. I was getting it before the direct, and I'm definitely getting it now. But just looking at South of Midnight, like, these are the kinds of games that get new players to buy consoles, in my opinion. So for as long as I can scream the praises, even if these praises are premature in the case of a game like South of Midnight, I'm going to do that because this is the kind of game that is inviting to a player that doesn't want to play Final Fantasy, that doesn't want to play Doom, that doesn't want to play Days Gone, The Last of Us, all of the big marquee franchises, like, that want to play a game like that looks like a literal storybook come to life, that you would want to get for your 8-year-old daughter who likes watching you play adventure games, but Dark Souls or whatever might be too much for her. Maybe even Horizon might be too much for her. But actually, here, South of Midnight, I love games that are for all ages. There's a reason Astrobot beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth last year at the Game Awards, and it's because of the barrier to entry. Your 70-year-old grandma can't really play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There's a lot happening just in the first 30 minutes of that game, but she could probably play Astrobot. So South of Midnight just gives me that energy. And I wrote down a couple of quotes. The land itself chooses Hazel as a weaver. If they do what I think they're going to do with the story of this game, it makes me emotional just thinking about it. Like, that game just looks really, really special. The land itself chooses Hazel as a weaver, and being a weaver being kind of like, a great, an honor to possess that kind of responsibility and power. I think it's really dope. Weavers can see the fabrics binding our worlds. Just like I'm excited for a fantastical adventure that takes place here in the Deep South. As somebody recording this out of South Georgia, I'm excited to play a game that takes place in the bayou. I love when the South is represented, our accents, our faces, our ways of life. And the Southern experience does, even though race unfortunately does play a large part of the day-to-day experience here in the South, when you are away from like racism and are away from like all of the isms and phobias, just the way of life down here, the friendliness, the speed of life, to see that translated in a video game is kind of exciting. So I'm really excited for what I wrote down. It appears like it's going to be a true hero's journey where there will be lessons learned for Hazel and ourselves as the player through Hazel, where she is going to come into her power and have to make choices about how to use it for the greater good. I'm excited about that, man. I'm excited. And I think Xbox has something special on their hands with this game. And I'm being Game Pass day one. That's dope, but I'm buying this game day one, no question. And if any one of you is listening to my pod, if you put that game on disc, bro, I will advertise that game for a year straight for free. Just give me a disc copy and I'll tell people every episode for the next 365 days to get South of Midnight. I'll peddle that game for you. This wasn't the next game in the preview, but I'm just going in order of just the information I'm covering. Doom, The Dark Ages. Excuse me, sorry. Doom, The Dark Ages just looks really freaking dope, bro. Like, there's nothing to even talk about. Doom Eternal was a Game of the Year contender in 2020. Yes, next to Last of Us Part 2. Doom Eternal was a true Game of the Year contender. And I love the mantra of, well, not mantra, but I love just the attitude of you control the buttons you press. For everybody that didn't like the platforming and how fast Doom Eternal ended up being, Doom Eternal was the best of the classic style Doom and modern day first person shooters that frankly are way faster than they used to be 10 years ago. And I like that Doom, The Dark Ages, a prequel to the story of Doom 2016, is trying to make you feel like, quote, a super weapon in the middle of a medieval war against hell. And that you yourself are a heavy tank character versus the sleek fighter jet of the Slayer character in Doom Eternal. There's a strong emphasis on power over the acrobatics, and just the adage of, in this game, if in Doom 2016, if it was a reintroduction to the Doom formula, in Doom Eternal, if Doom 2016 was about shooting, just the best shooting mechanics possible at the time of that game's release, and then Doom Eternal was about maneuverability in an arena space, Doom, The Dark Ages is about, quote, standing and fighting. And I love that. You got a little chain shield that has 3 different functions: blocking, throwing, and parrying, all tied to the same buttons, and those actions being contextual. And if you have played the last 2 Doom games, you know how strong the controls of those games are. If you played any id Software shooter from Rage 1, not Rage 2, Rage 1, Wolfenstein 1 and 2, and Doom 2016 and Eternal, then you know how strong the controls are in the gameplay and just how good it feels to play those games. The controls are really tight in those games and really well done, and just they just work in the worlds that id Tech allows these developers to build. And id Software, even though they didn't develop the Wolfenstein reboot and its sequel, The New Colossus, those were Machine Games titles. They were still built on that id Tech engine. And I think that engine is a strong part of why those games feel the way they feel. Rage still feels dope to me. A 2011 game. That game still feels amazing. It's your engine and just the way you develop with that engine is a strong part of your game standing the test of time. Like, Max Payne 3 is still one of the best feeling third-person shooters you could play right now. It plays better than some third-person shooters of today, some modern third-person shooters. And it's just because of how a developer uses their in-house engine to contextualize the feeling of being the character that you're playing as. And there is no better franchise currently that puts you in the shoes of who you are supposed to play. There's no franchise that does that better than Doom. Halo Infinite did a really good job. It did an immaculate job. Halo Infinite is a blast to play. One could argue it's a little bit better, though, to be the Slayer than it is to be Master Chief. It could be argued. I'm not going to argue it today. I'm just saying it could be argued. So continuing on, like I said, with the shield saw alone, you can block, throw, and parry it, and there are going to be abilities that you're going to unlock for just that specific part of the combat. You have 3 new melee options in between shooting and shielding yourself with the iron flail, the gauntlet, and the mace. And those 3 melee options can just be, further developed through your abilities that you purchase and just the elemental types that they have or whatever. Doom: The Dark Ages will introduce a new difficulty system and sliders that allow you to tone the speed and challenge of the game to your liking, whether it be the speed of the enemies you fight or the speed of the player character, the speed of the projectiles. Because one thing about the Dark Ages, it looks very old school Doom in that it is more focused with strafing to avoid the bullets. So where Eternal had you dodging and then eventually double dodging and dodging in the air to get out of the way and kind of increase your maneuverability in a battle, Doom: The Dark Ages is more head on. So when something is shot at you, it doesn't come at you at 1,000,000 miles a minute, but it's coming at you at a speed at which you can strafe around it, but you got to keep in mind the other bullets that are coming at you as well. And, with the added ability to shield yourself from certain attacks and parry and yada yada. I just can see the writing on the wall with this because Eternal, I remember that initial gameplay reveal and all of the platforming that went on in that first arena that they showcased. And a lot of people being like, and then playing the game and having to do platforming or incorporate the platforming, my eyes are burning a little bit, incorporate the platforming of that level into how you maneuvered through the combat of a certain arena. Some people weren't a fan of that. And I can understand if you're coming from 90s Doom into Eternal and it might be a little too much for you, even though, again, it is one of the best first-person shooter experiences to date. I can understand how that might turn some people off. So if we take that, which I think the strength of Eternal was how contextual it was finding that rhythm of shooting, glory killing, mining the glory kill for certain resources, or using, the burn button to set them on fire to increase your armor and yada yada, and just figuring out the rhythm of your combos as a first person shooter. I think they introduced the combo aspect in a wonderful way, and they incorporated that just really intelligently. And so I think the Dark Ages, even though it's scaling back to that classic Doom formula, they are keeping in mind the modern gamer who is just able to do more than we were able to do 25 years ago in terms of just how we play games. So still incorporating some type of rhythm that needs to be established, especially when it comes to mining your resources and dispatching certain types of enemies in the order in which you do so. The gameplay they show for that game just looks awesome. And I told you guys in the last pod, the first real game I'm playing is Assassin's Creed Shadows, but beyond that, it's Doom: The Dark Ages. And I told you it was going to be a May release, and sure enough, it's coming May 15th. And then beyond that, you also have new gameplay opportunities with the 30-story mech, also known as an Atlan. And that won't just be a one-off. There will be multiple missions where you take control of the Atlan, as well as the cybernetic dragon that will have its own mini bosses and multiple gameplay opportunities. The people at id Tech just really stress how much they value the single player experience and how they've doubled down. There is no battle mode this time around. It is just a strict single player, but a really meaty single player experience. I'm excited for that. Like, I will pay $70 for it took me about 15 hours to beat Eternal. But I've got like 50 to 60 hours out of that game, out of the master levels and all that kind of stuff. I'll gladly give you 70. Again, back to the price thing. I would give a game like Doom $80 to $90 day one if your development costs just kind of demanded that sort of price, because I know you'll give me a gameplay loop that I'll want to come back to after completing the initial story because of the difficulty. You already have 4 difficulties. You unlock a new difficulty once you beat it on the hardest difficulty. And then you got the master levels that introduce new gameplay loops and mechanics and difficulties and stuff like that. You could easily get like, this is the game I'm getting its deluxe edition for sure. I'm getting that $99 edition. There's no question. I might actually, I think they have a collector's edition. I sent it to my lady. I know you're watching this. Don't forget, I sent you that link to the Doom Slayer. It's in May, so there's no reason for her to get it for me. My birthday's not around that time. It's Mother's Day and Easter around that time of year. So, I'll probably end up still getting that for myself, but I want that collector's edition for sure. But I'm really proud of developers for doubling down on the single player experience. Like that was I'm proud of Xbox for doing that. I'm sure Fortnite makes them a lot of money. Call of Duty is making them a lot of money right now. I'm glad that, and we'll get those single player games that have multiplayer on them when we get Gears of War E-Day, the next Halo built on Unreal Engine. Will of course have multiplayer, the next Call of Duty, all that kind of stuff. Like they have their games for that. I'm glad that they showcase 4 games that are pure single player experiences, because to me, you're sending a message directly to the player that you're prioritizing their experience. And they came out and said this after the developer direct. We're prioritizing giving the best experiences to as many players as we possibly can. So, I mean, we should have saw the writing on the wall when you were able to when you were able to stream games direct to your phone with just a Game Pass subscription. You don't even need an Xbox to do that on your phone with a backbone controller or whatever. And now you can Bluetooth connect an Xbox controller to a MetaQuest and stream your games direct to to your MetaQuest VR headset and play Starfield on a 100-inch virtual screen. Like, I like the game that Microsoft is playing. I like them recognizing that even though they do make the best hardware, the Xbox Series X is better than a base PS5. Sorry. It's a better Blu-ray player. It's a better game player. It's got, to me, PlayStation has the better user interface, but Xbox has the better user experience, especially when you factor in stuff like quick resume and all that kind of stuff, where you can have multiple games in the background, and when you switch between them, you pick up right where you left off. Can't do that on PlayStation, unfortunately. That's not something that I feel like is a grand missing feature on the PlayStation, but that is a one-up for Xbox. And I love the Series X. And so, you know, Phil Spencer was on, I can't think of the name of the podcast, but it was Daniel, what's his name? Daniel Pena, I want to say, and Paris Lilly, that interviewed Phil Spencer recently on their podcast. And he was talking about how we're just trying to reach as many players as possible. Does that mean some of our games might be on other platforms? Yes, it does. All of them? No. I don't see why it's a reason to hate Xbox. especially if they're telling you we're committed to making hardware. Because one thing I did get out of that interview, and we'll get back to the next game and the developer direct. But one thing I did get out of that interview was him pretty much telling you we're working on a handheld too. So if Xbox can give me their Steam Deck, like, come on, bro. Like, just a 1080 or 1440p, that's wishful thinking. I'm cool with a 1080p 60 FPS OLED screen or 90 hertz in the Steam Deck case, where I can play Forza Horizon 5 with a good amount of graphical fidelity, where I could play Doom on the go, and please, and I know they're going to do this because they're Microsoft, but with SSD options, on the system itself, from probably in between 512 gigabytes and a terabyte, in addition to another console. They're not getting away from building hardware. I think they're committed to building a stronger ecosystem. And for as much complaining as is done about the fact that Xbox doesn't get certain games because of the limitations of the Series S, I think with a little more development time, certain companies could work around that. Can a Phantom Blade Zero or a Wukong run on a Series S? It's looking like Unreal Engine 5 and the Series S just don't gel well, so probably not. But they seem to figure out how to scale their own games really well. Halo plays at 60 FPS on a Series S. I think Forza Horizon 5 might be a 30 FPS experience, but it's a pretty good graphical fidelity on Series S. Starfield is a pretty good graphical fidelity on Series S. I watched my homeboy play that game for 50, 60 hours on Series S before he finally upgraded to a Series X. And I played that game for about 10 to 15 hours on his Series S and had a lot of fun with it. And that was at the time when it was still 30 FPS on the Series X. So they're committed to building a strong ecosystem. And the way you do that is not through multiplayer games. Unfortunately. Concords and Destinies aren't going to get people to buy consoles. It's the Dooms and the Halos and the Forzas and the Gran Turismos and the Spider-Mans and stuff like that get people to buy consoles. They get people to buy handhelds. I don't know how many people are playing Black Ops 6 on a Steam Deck, if it's even playable. But a lot of people are playing Cyberpunk on Steam Deck. A lot of people are playing The Witcher, Elder Scrolls, Dragon's Dogma 2, and just stuff like that. That's just scalable onto these handheld portables. And they have the Lenovo and the Steam Deck and all that, and the ROG Ally. They have created a market for the handheld. And I think Xbox is at this point in the gaming timeline, I think that they are in a better position than PlayStation to deliver a handheld. Because the Portal, if that's any indication of I don't know if we're going to get true handheld hardware from PlayStation. I think they're the premier console destination, but I think Xbox can make themselves through that handheld. I think they'll find success in that. So I'm excited to see what that does. And if I can play a game like Doom the Dark Ages on said handheld and they're going to ensure that I can, what are we even talking about? Like, they're setting themselves up with this software that they premiered with these new games. They're setting themselves up for a pretty good comeback this year. With, like, Call of Duty aside, with the developers that they've had in-house for the last 6 to 10 years, they're setting themselves up. So yeah. Last but certainly not least on my list of games from the developer direct, I have, hold on, let me get a look at my time. Last but certainly not least, I have Ninja Gaiden is back. This is the year of the Demon Slayer, bro. Ninja Gaiden's back, man. Ninja Gaiden 4, announced for fall 2005, is a collaboration between Team Ninja and Platinum Games. Y'all see my collection getting a little thicker. This, I don't care. I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those people who cares. Like, oh, it's not the same people at Platinum Games anymore. It's not the same people at CD Projekt Red working on The Witcher 4. The DNA is still there. There's still a philosophy that they have to live up to, regardless of how you feel. And between this and the Bayonetta series, and I feel like I'm missing a Platinum game. They might have did Revengeance. But what Platinum Games did on the 360 and on the PS4, Xbox One generation, bro, I'm glad that they're the ones collaborating. I'm glad that they're the ones collaborating with Team Ninja on the next Ninja Gaiden. Let me tell you something about Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden is like a Dynasty Warriors for me, in that it was a game that I admired from afar, that I never got to engage with. And the reason I didn't get to engage with Ninja Gaiden was just because it was M-rated when I was 12 years old. Ninja Gaiden 2 came out in 2008. I was 12. I didn't even have a 360. And by the time I got a 360, that wasn't the M-rated game I was trying to get off in my household. I was trying to get Halo. You know what I mean? I was trying to get my parents to be like, yo, like, Halo is cool. It's just aliens. So, and I watched Ninja Gaiden 3 come out. I played the demo briefly on the 360 way back in the day. I just I never got a chance. Now I do have a chance, and we'll get into that later. But Ninja Gaiden 4 looks freaking awesome, bro. It features a new Master Ninja protagonist, or he's working his way to becoming a Master Ninja, in Yakumo from the Raven clan, who are rivals to the Hayabusa clan. And Ryu Hayabusa does play a pivotal role in this game, with his story bringing him to clash with Yakumo. You can see in their gameplay presentation that you will play as Ryu also. It takes place in a Tokyo that is devastated by the, quote, reign of dark rot, which is caused by the dark dragon hovering over the city. Because of the curse, the environment twists and contorts over the course of the story, with the world overcome by fiends and adversaries. Ninja Gaiden 4 looks to heighten the speed of combat and the speed of battle, with techniques and weapons tailored for large group battles. There are also intense 1v1 battles with enemies using techniques similar to the players. Those are just the notes that I made from watching the developer direct and just rewatching the Ninja Gaiden 4 section. A couple of notes. The game looks freaking gorgeous. It's a multi-platform. It's PS5, Xbox Series, and all that kind of stuff, and PC. But it does look gorgeous. I don't know if it's built on Unreal Engine 5. I don't remember them specifying that. But if the other Ninja Gaiden game they talked about is a Unreal Engine remake, it stands to reason that Ninja Gaiden 4 might be an Unreal Engine 5 game. I'll get more information on that, and I'll just put an asterisk and let you know. But it looks gorgeous. This is like... No, I can't think of anybody better at that kind of high-speed action combat than Platinum freaking Games, bro. Like, go and look at the Ninja Gaiden 4 gameplay if you can. I'm going to try. I don't even want to put too much video of the Dev Direct in my podcast episode this go around. I normally do put gameplay and put my own gameplay and stuff, but not for this one, just because just go watch it on your own. There's no point in me screen recording and putting a compressed file on there. Go see it for yourself. It looks super slick, super gorgeous. Like I said, Xbox really values presentation. PlayStation does as well, don't get me wrong. But they seem to value technical innovation in their presentation. Like, the sequels to their games always look way better than the predecessor. Like, Halo Infinite looks better than Halo 5. Gears E8 is going to mop the floor with Gears 5. And Ninja Gaiden 4 just looks freaking awesome. I'm glad that like character action games are making a return. I'm not mad at the Souls-likes that we've got in the past, but I'm glad to live in the age where Stellar Blades and Black Myth Wukongs and hopefully Lost Soul Asides and Phantom Blade 0 and Ninja Gaiden 4 will thrive. Like, I'm just glad that it's like 2009 all over again. We just have a buffet of character action experiences to engage with. And it's just whatever flavor you want. Ninja Gaiden is for the people that are looking for that Devil May Cry type of challenge. And if the remake that they released is any indication, it'll have difficulty options anyway. But Ninja Gaiden is known for, if you want that raw challenge, you can get it out of Ninja Gaiden. And I think playing games like Wukong and Stellar Blade just have me ready for something a little bit harder. I'm not looking for Dark Souls, but I am looking to pull off like really slick maneuvers and super dope combos against enemies and adversaries that are exceptional. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this kind of high speed combat. And this every game that Xbox showed, with the exception of the game that I'm not talking about, which is Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's a turn-based RPG that I am interested in, but not interested in enough to talk about on my own podcast. I'm not even interested in it enough to get it day one. I will be relying on other journalists to see whether or not I really want to play that game. But I do like how they are trying to get people like me who like action games like this to play their turn-based game by like kind of like I don't know, giving us visceral cinematic turn-based combat and making it as close to real time as they possibly can. So it's piqued my interest, but not enough for me to talk about it. If you're interested in that sort of game, it's Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's a turn-based party RPG. Check it out. Do your Googles or whatever. But everything else that Xbox showcase is a day one purchase. South of Midnight is a day one purchase. Doom: The Dark Ages is a day one deluxe edition purchase. Ninja Gaiden 4 is no different. If there's a deluxe physical package, I'll get it. If the best thing I can get physically is standard, then that's what I'll settle for. I don't really believe digital deluxes just are not worth it. Unless they're like a Doom or Assassin's Creed where you get just a significant amount more of missions and story gameplay and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. Another unveiling they had in the Ninja Gaiden block is Ninja Gaiden 2 Black was shadow released the same day of the developer direct. If you're on Xbox, it's on Game Pass Ultimate. It is on the PlayStation Store for $49.99. Again, I like that Xbox is committed to a multi-platform. There's no reason Ninja Gaiden should be exclusive. I don't think it ever was. I think Ninja Gaiden 2 and Ninja Gaiden 3 were on PS3, so there's no need to go exclusive now. Just like there's no need, I didn't really want them to go exclusive on the Call of Duty. I would have gladly bought made sure I had an Xbox so I could play Call of Duty, but there was no reason for them to go exclusive with that. Same with Ninja Gaiden. Like, it makes more sense to keep Halo over there, and I'm not really going to speak on the rumors around that game until we get just official confirmation. Same with Forza Horizon. But like, keep Forza over there, keep Halo over there, keep your Gears over there, but if you want to give us Starfield, Doom, which you had to give us Doom, Ninja Gaiden, eventually South of Midnight will probably come to PlayStation. I think that's just good for the industry, bro. Like, I think Xbox, because they have, I think them losing the console war made us forget that they actually make really good games. They publish really good games. Whether you like it or not, Starfield is a really good game. It's a really good game today. It might not be a perfect game, but it's a really good one. I think Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be at the bare minimum a really good game. I think Outer Worlds 2 is at the bare minimum going to be a really good game. And I think it's great that their really good games are possibly or definitely coming to other platforms. So yeah, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. One interesting note about Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is that it doesn't appear to be a from the ground up remake remaster of the original Ninja Gaiden 2. It seems to be using Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 code, and Unreal Engine is kind of taking that code and redressing itself as a modern Unreal Engine title, so you get those modern visuals, which I'm not mad at, but I did see hardcore fans in the Ninja Gaiden community make that note that it is not a remake of the true original Ninja Gaiden 2, that if you want that particular experience because of what Sigma did in its release, you kind of have to go back to Ninja Gaiden 2, which, because of backwards compatibility, is still playable on an Xbox One or Xbox Series. It might even be on Game Pass. So yeah, like I said, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is available now for $49.99 and on Game Pass Ultimate. I will be getting that game eventually. There is actually a physical copy that, for whatever reason, you can only get through Play Asia, which is like Asian Amazon, basically. Like, that was the only place you could get the Black Myth Wukong Collector's Edition. They ship all over the world, but you got to pay, like, the shipping costs a little bit more than it normally does in the US because of custom fees and all that kind of stuff. But there is a physical copy that is releasing in April for Ninja Gaiden 2 Black on the PlayStation 5 that I will be getting because it's region free. So yeah, this Xbox Developer Direct actually has me really excited about the possibility of this Switch 2 Direct that's coming in April. The Switch 2 was officially revealed in January. We knew it was coming. The third-party accessory developers told us that it was on the way. They were showcasing accessories at the Consumer Electronics Show early in January. So I'm just, it's very, I'm very interested to see like what the Switch 2 actually is, because all the trailer showed you was that it's coming and this is what the console looks like. Looks really, really dope, really sexy design, very sleek, magnetic Joy-Cons. The Switch has always looked bulky to me. The OLED was a great mid-generation refresh, but that original Switch version 1 and version 2 design is just like, it's not very, to me, it's never been the most aesthetically pleasing. But the OLED was, and it looks like they took design cues from the OLED and just are giving us a larger version of that. Is the screen LCD or OLED? I don't know. Is this supposed to match the power of a PS4? That's what the rumors say. I don't know. We're all just waiting for the Direct in April. That's when we're going to find out launch titles. That's when we're going to find out about the details of backwards compatibility. That's when we're going to see what multi-platform games are coming to the Switch 2. You should not be anticipating PS5, Xbox Series, or even Series S levels of power. I do tend to lean into the rumors that say we're looking at a PS4, maybe PS4 Pro levels of power. I doubt it though. I doubt it'll be Pro level, maybe Pro level, but I doubt we're not going to get a 4K screen. We may get 4K from the dock, maybe 1440p upscaled, or maybe 1080p upscaled to 4K. If it's PS4 Pro level, that's all that is. That was never true 4K. It was a checkerboard 4K solution. So it might be PS4 Pro levels in terms of power, but we don't know. We literally don't know. And that's my timer that lets me know I really have like 15 minutes left on this recording. But we genuinely don't know. So I'm very excited to see. I will be getting a Switch 2 day one. Hey, shout out my guy David. You know, we've been chatting back and forth about the Switch 2 and what could possibly come. I know he would like to see an Assassin's Creed come to Switch. The rumored launch lineup, third-party launch lineup, is stuff like Elden Ring, which I think would scale well on a Switch 2. They figured out Witcher 3. I think they could figure out Elden Ring on a Switch 2. Tekken 8 is a rumored title. I don't see how that's going to work. Maybe it'll be a pared down version. We'll see. Because I think that's an Unreal Engine 5 game, and I just don't know. That engine doesn't scale well downwards. So take that Tekken 8 inclusion with a grain of salt. But I did see stuff like Elden Ring. Maybe we get some of those Assassin's Creed like Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla titles on the Switch 2. It'll be interesting, but I'm more interested in their first party lineup, to be honest. I'm more interested, or should I say the Switch exclusive lineup, you know, because the Switch does have strong exclusives outside of Mario. You do have stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles coming up in April that I'll be probably getting on Switch 2. You have stuff like Astral Chain. You have Bayonetta 2 and 3. So those are just games that come to mind that are not like Mario and Zelda titles. But hey, listen, a 3D Mario adventure, Odyssey was one of the best games of the last generation. One of the games my lady beat before she decided to trade in a Switch for a PS5. She really loved Odyssey. And I love watching people play Odyssey. I never got to play it myself, but I'm a big fan of Super Mario 3D games. Super Mario 64 is a revered experience in my memory. It's probably the first game that I ever beat. So a 3D, I could buy a 3D Mario day one. I would be curious if we get any sort of up-resing or anything like that from Switch games on the Switch 2. I highly doubt it. If you look at the Wii to Wii U, that wasn't going on. You could play Wii games on a Wii U, but you weren't getting an increase in fidelity, which that wasn't even a talking point for consoles at the time then either. Like your Xbox One wasn't going to up-res your Xbox 360 games at the time. So, you know, and Nintendo they've never been a graphics-focused hardware developer or game software developer. So we'll see. But I am curious as to what Switch games are not backwards compatible. Like, are we talking about Ring Fit Adventure that's not going to be backwards compatible? Stuff like Labos or whatever that cardboard stuff was for the Switch. Is it going to be stuff like that? Because that I can understand. But is it going to be corporate greed that is not going to allow you to play your Switch copy of Minecraft on Switch 2? Or are you going to have to buy the Switch 2 version? Is it going to be stuff like that going on? Certain Zelda's not playable. Like, I don't know. That's what I really want to know from this Direct. I don't even care about the power. I don't really care about the graphical fidelity because I've seen Switch games on an OLED, on an OLED console, and they look good. You know, they look like good games to play. So again, we know nothing. And I would just encourage any of my viewers or listeners to just be careful with, you know, where you get your information, because I try my best not to report on rumors on this podcast because I don't really engage with rumors. I don't engage with blue check rumors. I damn sure don't engage with Facebook rumors. I don't engage with anything that doesn't come from an official press release, really. I don't even care about the publications anymore because now the developers themselves communicate directly with us, the hardware developers and the software developers. So just we got a nice little wait, you know, until April when we have that Direct. But I anticipate a late June or mid-July launch of this console. I don't think it'll be any later than August, but I think we will get a midsummer release of the Switch 2. I think that'll be good for the industry too. The Switch is arguably the most successful console of all time. It just outpaced the PS2. So I think that they have an argument for the king spot in the canon of video games. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just make it a little bit better. Make it a little bit sexier. You know, make your Joy. I like how in the trailer they highlight the rotation of the Joy-Con sticks, like letting you know, like, hey, we know what was going on with them Joy-Cons back in the day. You're not going to have to worry about that with these. I'm curious about color and stuff like that because it looks very uniform. It doesn't look like it's set up to where you're going to have pink and red and blue and yellow and orange Joy-Cons. It doesn't look that way, but we'll see. We don't know. And so as gamers, I would just encourage you guys to just there's safety in not knowing, because you keep your expectations from being stupid high. And so when things are revealed to you, you get to accept them for what they are and decide if that's for you or not. Like, because of the cachet of Doom and Doom Eternal, I'm playing Doom the Dark Ages, but when you show me something and you explain it to me, I'm even more excited for what you're trying to do in this game. I'm sold. Same with Ninja Gaiden 4. Same with South of Midnight. I didn't play We Happy Few, but people enjoyed that game. So I'm excited I know they can do an art style really well. It might not be the best action combat ever, but it'll be enough to carry me through the story. And that's all I need for that particular game. You know, like I said last episode, let's just take games for what they are. Let's wait for Nintendo to tell us what the Switch 2 is and what it can do before we start speculating and coming there's a difference in anticipating what games you think might release this go around, what kind of third party multi-platform games might come versus oh yeah, the Switch 2 is going to be able to do this. Who told you that? Saying I think and then telling me definitively that this is what it's going to do. Don't be assuming you make an ass out of you and me, bro. Nobody official knows what's going on. Maybe some journalists have some press release that they can't release yet. I highly doubt it though, this far away from April. I think all anybody had was the specs of the design of the Switch 2 itself. I think the accessory makers have the most information, and I think all it is the dimensions on the console, so they can know what accessories they can develop and the I/O of said console for the controllers that they make and yada yada. But I don't think anybody knows the power of the system and how the games are going to run and how well they run and what the UI is going to be and yada yada. We don't know any of that, so let's just wait and see. That's why I don't have much to say about the Switch 2, other than I'm excited about it. You know. So I am, though. I can say the year of 2025 has officially started. Dynasty Warriors Origins officially kicked that off on the 17th of January, that Friday. And then the following week was just news for what's to come throughout the year. And I think Xbox has started. I know PlayStation's going to answer with a good state of play. They got to show us Lost Souls Aside, which, the developer has said they're looking to release this year. They got to show us Ghost of Yotei. And then of course they're going to have their remasters and stuff like that. They're going to come out this year and whatnot. So, Xbox has kicked it off, and I think they've kicked it off really strong. Xbox and Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like 2025 is officially in full motion. We're going now. We're going. So I'm excited to see what the year brings. I'm not going to call any game of the year contenders yet, but I do think the Dark Ages is going to be a strong contender. I don't think South of Midnight's going to be a contender, but I also don't think any of the BS like DEI types of conversation are going to be a factor for that game. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll survive all of that. I think it'll be able to stand on its own. I think people are going to love and enjoy Ninja Gaiden. I think we're going to be happy to see Platinum Games back in the mix again. And I think Switch 2 and Xbox are going to make the borders between console makers and publishers. I think the borders are going to be a little bit thinner, and we're going to see a little more synergy between these game companies. So, yeah. Any predictions that you guys have, please let me know in the comments. Like, let's get a little more conversation. We're getting more people watching these episodes and listening, all the way to the very end. Let's get a little more conversation, man. What are your predictions for the Switch 2? What are your predictions for Xbox? Are you excited to see them, go the multi-platform route and be able to buy Xbox Game Studio games on a PlayStation or potentially Switch 2? What are you looking forward to in the year 2025? Besides more episodes of the Working Class Gamer podcast. So this has been episode 11. Thank you guys so much again for joining me. As always, I appreciate your support. Please like and subscribe. Make sure your post notifications are on. I really just appreciate you guys for being here every single episode. Our community is growing stronger with every episode and with every stream. And I couldn't do this without you and your support. So thank you so much for being here. God bless you all. Find you something good to play. Recommend stuff to me. Let's recommend stuff to each other. And yeah, man, I look forward to seeing you guys again in about 2 weeks for the next episode of the Working Class Gamer podcast. It has been a pleasure. Peace.